What up, gangsters? Welcome back to another episode of Fear Gauge. Guess what day it is? It's Friday, which means that it's time for Fear Gauge. The piece of media that we are gauging today is a movie called Barbarian. It came out in 2022. Apparently, I just completely missed this, release or something like that, because I had never heard of this movie before. The way these Fear Gauge videos works is, first, I give you kind of my description of the film in a non-spoiler context. So I'm going to tell you how scary it is, or what aspects are scary about it, without spoiling anything, so that you can go and actually watch the movie based on kind of what I'm saying. So if you're kind of wanting to watch it, but you haven't really taken the steps to do so, that this part is kind of the first part is kind of to tell you what to expect kind of coming from the movie without watching it. And then the second part of the video is me actually delving into what made it scary, or if it's scary, that sort of thing. And then at the end, I actually rate how scary the movie is. So if you want, you can watch the first part, skip to the end, see the rating, and then you can decide for yourself if you want to watch it, or you can just listen to me talk about it, and then even with the spoilers, if you still want to watch it, that's all completely up to you. Or if you've seen it before and you want to think, or if you want to see how I rate it, of course, that's up to you. That's your prerogative. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to listen. In fact, you can click off this video right now, or you can click subscribe. Crazy idea. Let's get right into it. So, non-spoilers. I think this movie does the setting really well. I'm gonna sound like an English teacher talking about this, but I think it does the setting really well, because in this movie, you know where the main characters are, and you understand their location, so it's not like you're kind of freaked out. They're not in the woods, they're not... this is not spoilers, because this is literally the whole plot of the movie. You can find this on the IMDb or the description of the movie, but they're not in some woods or something like that, so it's not a completely open place. You understand their location, but the reality is, and the movie does this later on, is that you don't know it. You know it, but you don't know it. You know what I mean? So it's very... It seems okay on the surface, but you'll see kind of later in the film why that's not necessarily true. I also like this movie. This movie is great as a thriller, because it actually keeps you kind of on the edge the entire time. It keeps alluding to things, or makes the idea, you're trying to... Obviously, every single person is the same way, in the way that you're trying to figure out the mystery, what's going on here. Everybody's doing the same thing. They're sitting here whoa, what's going on? Who's the bad guy? This is a horror movie, who's the bad guy? Who's the the slasher? What's gonna happen? That sort of thing. So everybody's thinking about that, but this movie does a good job of steering you in a direction. You think you have it, but it turns you in a different direction. If you thought this movie wasn't going to be scary, or if you thought it was just going to be another modern horror movie that just kind of falls into obscurity, you'll be pleasantly surprised. That's all I can give you without spoilers, because I would be doing you a injustice. I would be doing you an injustice if I told you anything more, because I think this movie, I think it's a better experience if you know as little as humanly possible going into the movie, so that when you see everything, you're like, oh, okay, I was not expecting that. So anyway, here is the point where you can click and see the rating at the end, to skip the spoiler section. Or if you haven't seen the movie yet, I encourage you to pause the video here and then go watch the movie and come back, so that we can post-viewing discussion. You can see what I have to say. But yeah, into the spoilers part, or I guess into the discussion about the actual piece of media without having to worry about stepping around spoilers. Personally, I love the movie. I thought the movie was fantastic, and I think that all modern horror movies should aspire to kind of reach this level. This was properly, a very pleasant movie to watch. Well, unpleasant in the way that, it's a horror movie, but pleasant in the way that I actually really enjoyed the viewing experience. I had literally zero idea going into it what I was to expect. Typically when I see modern horror movies, like, there's always some things I steer away from are like supernatural horror movies, like The Conjuring and Insidious, because they have just killed that genre. Like, just took all the energy and excitement out of it. They just killed it with like the 36 movies that all have, oh, it's a demon who has come into this house and is haunting them, and it's freaky, it's scary. Like, I hate those movies. So I'm expecting them to be not that great. But this one, I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't get any of that. What specifically made it scary? This is quite a big list. So, first of all, right off the bat, this movie makes you uncomfortable the whole time. Which is a good thing. Part of fear is being uncomfortable, Right off the bat, obviously the plot of the movie is that a girl kind of gets double booked on like an Airbnb that she rented out. That's kind of where the plot starts. But of course, the dude who is playing like the random guy that she gets partnered with is Bill Skarsgård, or the guy who plays Pennywise the Clown. So already you're like, okay, this cannot be real. You're like, this is like the creepiest guy ever. Also, like, he does a really good job he's playing like this forward character, like this guy who's like also clearly in an awkward situation, but he's being like very, very like almost overly friendly. Like he insists, oh, there's a wine bottle, we could pop it open, that sort of thing, and, talk about this, blah, blah, blah. And naturally, if you were a woman and you got an Airbnb and there's a completely random dude, he's in there and he's offering you wine, it's just an uncomfortable situation, right? Nobody wants to be in that situation. The whole time you're sitting there thinking that he's going to be like a bad thing. He's going to be like the bad guy, and you can see it from a mile away. That's not necessarily how it plays out. I said it before in the non-spoiler section, but the setting does this movie so well. I really liked that in this movie they show you the house. They really let you get to know the house. Like, you see the full living room, you see the kitchen, you see the one bedroom that's there, you see the entire hallway, you see the laundry room, you see the bathroom, you see everything, right? And so the whole time when you're seeing the characters interacting with the house, you know exactly where they're at. You know how close they are to certain places, how close they are to their car, how this whole thing. So it makes it feel like more intimate. That's at least on the surface level. But then it, but you don't. So imagine like your own house, right? Imagine it in your own house. You were just snooping around and you found an entire underground tunnel system underneath your house. That's just another extra layer of like, what the hell? So the whole time you're like thinking about all the things that are in the house, but you're also thinking about like the tunnels underneath, you know what I mean? So I really liked that. I thought that was really cool. Hey guys, Post Aaron here. While I was editing, I also forgot to mention that during this section, there is a scene that actually happens in the. There's a scene that happens when she's kind of exploring the house, because the other guy is kind of missing, so she doesn't know where he's at. So she's exploring the house and she finds the basement, which the basement's like that's the scary stuff. She goes and she finds like some creepy rooms, but what I like about this part is like, you see the creepy rooms. There's only like 3, and there's like that room with the mattress and the camera, which is also freaky, and you're like, oh, okay, this is super weird or whatever. But There's nothing really out of the ordinary there. Well, it's out of the ordinary, but it's not like really freaky at this point. And then the scene where she opens the door, like the kind of hidden door in the back, and it leads down into like a tunnel that you just can't see the bottom of. I think that was like so well done, because I think everybody who was in the room with me when I was watching it, everybody was like as soon as they saw it, they're like, oh shit. And the whole time you're sitting there telling yourself, and you're like just internally saying, please, for the love of God, don't go down there. like this is a horror movie. Use your brain. Don't go down there. But then what made it so much better, made it so good, is when you can hear him like calling to her from the pit, like from the depths of the pit, and you can feel her internal struggle. She's like, I shouldn't just leave him down there. And you're like, leave him down there, man. He's a random dude. Leave him down there. And then so she chooses to be the better person and go down there. I just thought that was really awesome. But while I was editing that, I figured I should throw that in there just so, you know, all my bases are touched. But anyway, back to the video. I think it's worth mentioning. It's better for the viewer to know the location better, because like if the viewer were like thrown into the scenario and told go save the main character in this movie, in the Barbarian, you could definitely do that. You're like, okay, I know exactly where they're at right now. You know what I mean? I've never been to this place. I've never seen this place before, but because of the way the movie is filmed, I actually know exactly where the main character is. I'm basically glazing this movie right now because I really liked it. They could have ended the movie like an hour in or so, when like the main girl gets like captured by the creature. Introduce the creature. When she gets captured by the creature, they could have ended it there and just left us with like to our own devices, just like, oh man, that like this is. She got caught by a freaky tunnel monster under the house, you know, that sort of thing. Oh man, that's crazy. They could have ended it there, but the fact that they didn't, I think just added so many more layers to the movie. And I really appreciated that they didn't, because in the end, as we saw, they actually left us with more to think about. Loki, I really feel bad for this actor, the guy who plays like the secondary main character, like the actor guy, because he just gets thrown into like the worst scenarios for an actor, like the worst bodily horror movies. Because I'm sure you have all heard of Tusk, which I'm sure I'll do a fear gauge on eventually, which is where like a dude gets turned into a human walrus or whatever, and it's the same actor. So in fact, actually, while I was watching this, when he came on screen, I was like, oh no way, they got the Tusk guy on here, you know. So I feel kind of bad for him. Let's actually talk about like the meat of the scares, like what really. Obviously, you know, the setting can be creepy, the situation's creepy, but let's be honest here, everybody's here for the monster, you know. Let's just get straight to the point. No reading between the lines, straight, clear cut. The monster's freaky as hell. All my homies hate a weird creature that lives in the tunnel, the weird incest creature that lives in the tunnels, you know. All my homies hate that. They also gave her like that weird mother trait thing, or like the weird like motherly instincts thing, the whole focus on like being a mother and stuff like that. And that just made things even weirder and more uncomfortable, because it's like, it's one thing to have a freaky ass creature that lives in a tunnel, but a freaky ass creature that lives in a tunnel that kidnaps people to like treat them as a baby is like even worse. that just makes it definitely not something that was on my bingo card of things that I expected to see out of the movie. So obviously, I already mentioned uncomfort or lack of comfort is a great thing to have when you're trying to make a movie that's scary. Well, literally every time I see this monster on screen, I was like physically revolted especially because usually the monster is doing something revolting in the way of like trying to baby the main characters, who are full-size adults. So most of the time I'm like, oh god, no. So, which I that's great. That adds another layer of freakiness to it. Whoa. Freaky. I'm getting freaky with a monster in the tunnels. Oh. Okay, Diddy. Okay, Diddy. There was one really good scare in the movie that was kind of like the first introduction of the monster. And actually, admittedly, in a funny way, I actually kind of missed it. Or at least I missed the shock that came from it. Because I was watching it with my girlfriend, and she actually freaked out at the guy, not the monster. So the guy, the Pennywise, that actor, like she went down into the tunnels to save the guy. The main character went down in the tunnels to save the guy, and so she finds him, and he's like, "Help me! You gotta get me out of here!" But when she like shows the flashlight on him without making a loud sound or anything, it just shows him in the tunnel. That's when she freaked out, and so I was like, dude, I was like, dude, it's just a guy. And then literally like 30 seconds later, he gets like obliterated by the monster. So I was like, oh well, my shock's already kind of been taken over. But I will admit, it was a good scare. Another part of things that are scary is kind of the fear of the unknown. Obviously, that's what most people say, is like people are afraid of things that they do not know. So if you know a lot about something, you're not afraid of it, But this is great. What this movie does well is the threat, the monster, is so unknown. You know very, very little about it the entire time. So, and also how fast it is, how strong it is, that sort of thing. So the actual predictability of the threat is so low that it makes it really scary, because it's like, okay, we just saw that thing in the tunnels. Are we dead? Is it gonna find us? Does it know its way around the tunnels? Can it see? That sort of thing. It makes it very scary, and I really like that, because the whole time the main characters are like trying to find their way around the tunnels, and they're trying to find the way out of their house, and they're trying to figure out a solution to this. And the whole time I'm like, is she gonna like pop around the corner? Is she gonna like crawl on the ceiling? Is she like right behind them the whole time? Has she just been watching? I'm like kind of like geeked the whole time about it, and I actually really liked that. I was like, this is good. This is a good movie. Makes me think this way. Also, the other thing that kind of made it was a big part of what made it scary was the implication of like the scary, deeper plot that's going on. Which is like I said earlier, I'm glad that they didn't end it after the main girl gets captured the first time. I'm glad they like added this on, because they were able to build this secondary plot and like the whole reason behind the monster and that sort of thing. So if you missed it somehow while you were watching it, the old guy who the actor finds in the tunnels later in the movie, who kablamos himself, the old guy who kablooies himself, that old guy was kidnapping women and kind of like indoctrinating them into this like weird, horrific pregnancy pipeline thing. If you've read the story Baraska, or if you've heard of the story Baraska, you would kind of understand like what I'm getting at and that sort of thing, except it was on obviously a much smaller scale than Baraska and stuff like that, but it's kind of similar to that. But what makes it even worse is I think he actually stopped kidnapping women or whatever, but because then as you learn that this creature that is like killing people or whatever is essentially like a third generation incest amalgam, basically. And that's again adding to the lack of knowledge. That just you don't know what a person would be capable of both mentally and physically under those conditions. I also liked that like the movie introduced this old guy as like the worst person ever. He's like the most vile human ever, literally like the equivalent of like an axe murderer and stuff like that in a horror movie, you know. And he's introduced as this, and then when the main actor finds him, you're like, oh my god, he's the threat, you know. Oh my god, like he's gonna like kidnap the actor and they're never gonna escape, that sort of thing. But then he just kind of takes the easy way out, in the lack of better terms there, game ends himself, and you're just like, oh my god, he understands how bad the monster is, and like how dangerous the monster is. Clearly he understands the danger of his own creation, you know. So it's like after that you're like, oh shit, you know, like that's not that's not good. When the bad guy, you know, removes himself from the scenario to avoid the thing that he has created, the main characters are not in a good position. That's all I gotta say, you know. But and to add some sprinkles on top of that, they took the studio took like the horror game approach to it. So it's like this monster, basically, if you get caught by the monster, you're done. It's not like a horror. It's not like a murderer or like a I'm trying to think, like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre or like a Scream, where you have the ability, like if you fight hard enough or whatever, that you can escape, you know, that you can like get past him or that sort of thing. There's not that notion with this. Like if the main character gets caught, there's it's almost a guarantee that they're done. The main, or the monster, kills multiple people, or removes them from the movie, in, I'll say, tastefully gory ways. The reason I say tastefully is because a lot of movies, or I guess some movies, will do gore in a very untasteful way, which just kind of is like, ugh, gross, you know, like. And some people like that, you know. Some people are into that whole genre of just like bloody slasher movie, blah blah blah. But I'm a scary guy. I like scary things that like will, you know, get my blood pumping, because I'm an adrenaline junkie. So like just seeing a bunch of like copious amounts of blood and like guts everywhere, I'm just like, okay. I'm like all right guys, like let's tone it down. But this is kind of shock, almost adds more to the shock value, how fast this monster like kills people, you know. And so I like that, because it's like you're rooting for the main characters to get away from the monster. And so they, like you're saying, like, girl, if you get caught, you're done. Run, like run faster. Who cares about your shoes? Get to your car. Where are your keys? You know, you should have left. That sort of thing. And if you're stressing that much about the character and how much that she's trying to survive, you're going to have a much better time watching the movie, because, you know, you care about the characters and you care about whether or not they die. So that means you're more into the movie, which makes it better. This is just a side plot, or a side point on like the whole like sinister plot reveal thing. But what I also liked, which kind of adds a level to the horror factor of it, is after, like, they introduce obviously the old guy who from the tunnels and stuff like that, and kind of what the plot was going on, like what the sinister plan that this guy had developed and what he was actually doing, which is terrible. It's a terrible thing what he's doing, but you don't even notice. But like obviously the Airbnb that they stay at is really nice, it's upkept, that sort of thing. But every single house in that development is completely abandoned. And it's like, that's really weird that they would set up an Airbnb in that abandoned neighborhood. That's so strange. But it wasn't that the Airbnb was set up in that neighborhood. It was just that the neighborhood that was once surrounding the Airbnb has now been completely destroyed by, you guessed it, the creature that comes out at night. Which that was also, this wasn't in my notes, but I'm glad I mentioned this. Or glad I brought this up. But that made it so much more exciting too, in the movie, because like they got out of the tunnels, the actor and like the girl, they got out of the tunnels and they're like, oh thank God, well we're safe, you know, like yes we're safe. And then the homeless guy who you meet earlier in the film, he's like you're not safe, nobody's safe here, you know, like the she comes out at night. she like stalks the streets at night, and you're like, what? You're like, what? They don't even get to breathe, you know, they have to keep running. So then that horror that was once in the tunnels underneath the house, like that like fear of, oh, is she behind them, does she know like where they're at, that sort of thing, that fear has now translated to the neighborhood, you know. So which is fantastic. That's so great. Um, but yeah, I think it is just absolutely crazy that this one like incest monster has essentially Dracula Flow wiped out their entire quadrant. Or at least that's the notion I got. Maybe there's like an actual different thing going on, and I might have just taken the wrong idea from that. But as far as I know, that's kind of like what is going on there. And to me, that adds them just, it makes it just that much more scary. But so now it's actually time for the rating. This is without spoilers or anything like that. So if somebody skips from the earlier part of the video, this is for that part, so that they can actually see the rating of the video or the rating of the movie. So I give this movie, which we actually have we have 5 ratings. So the ratings go from 0 being not scary. This is your Minecraft movies or things like that, you know, Super Mario movies where it's like, this is literally just a kid's movie or something like that. 1 is creepy, 2 is spine chilling, 3 is stressful, 4 is scary, and 5 is nightmare fuel. 5, like, if I personally have not seen a movie that is a 5 yet, like a movie where I'm just like, absolutely, I will never go back to looking at this movie again. And who knows, maybe we'll get there at a certain point. But I give this movie, drumroll please, I give this movie a 4. This is a genuinely scary movie, and I really, really like that. Again, I said it, I'm an adrenaline junkie, and I really liked that. So, and they just did everything so well, where it's creepy the whole time, with just enough jump scares to, well, actually, there's not even that many jump scares. I think just the horror comes from this sheer, like, lack of knowledge of what's going on, and the main characters trying to deal with it kind of invokes that fear in the viewer. And I think that's really great. I think it's a really good movie. It's also just a good movie just in general. So definitely worth the watch, but yeah, I give it a 4. It's a scary movie. So that being said, if you're like weak stomached or that sort of thing, or just absolutely cannot watch horror movies, or if you need somebody to watch a horror movie with you, by all means, this is a movie that you would definitely need to, you know, call your friend up, have them sit in with you, or something like that, because it's a scary movie. I definitely liked it. But anyway, that is all for this episode of Fear Gauge. So by all means, you know, if you thought what I was saying was pretty valid, if you thought that my assessment of this piece of media was pretty solid, or if you just like my personality or anything like that, by all means, subscribe, hit the like button. It works. It helps the algorithm, that sort of thing. Helps me spread the love to all the horror fans out there. But anyway, I also have other types of videos on the channel as well. Like, I'll play horror games and stuff like that, and I'll actually rate the horror games too. So all sorts of media going on my channel. But anyway, like, subscribe, share it to people, tell people about it, that sort of thing. I also have a group channel called the Juicebox Squad, where basically anything that I do that is not involved with this channel kind of goes on there. So you can see me doing some other things. I have a fun little show that I do with another one of my friends, where we kind of try some different foods and stuff like that. And usually it's the weirdest stuff that we can find at like gas stations or stores around us, or different countries, that sort of thing. So it's definitely a fun time. So definitely go check that out. But anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. Deuces.